Hello everyone. What we have here today is the famous Amiga 500, and this Amiga has some story to tell. I was downtown to this flea market as usual, and there was a lady, and she had like computer components, used computer parts to sell, right on laying on the grass, like on her feet, around everywhere, on the ground. And for the most part it was keyboards, USB keyboards, PSL fashion keyboards, you name it. So just asked how much is for this one, and she said, you want this big one? This keyboard's gonna occupy all your desk. I said, yeah, but it looks robust, looks fine to me, even though, yeah, she goes, keys missing, why don't you get a slimline, a light keyboard, just pick another one. I said, nah, this is good, looks good to me, more robust and reliable. And she goes, alright, if you want it so much, but just to let you know, it doesn't even have a cable to get connected to the computer, I'm just saying. Alright, so I said, yeah, no worries, I can deal with that. So she goes, $3. And there you go. Here is my $3 Amiga. I just got it, and I thought we might have a session inspection and probably a fix together on camera. I can see that it is dirty and filthy somehow. Some corrosion, you can see little metallic parts inside, dirty of course, not the original screws in place, no module, no expansion cover, no feet, rubber feet or anything. You can see the corrosion even from this point, and even through the ventilation gaps right there. But let's see, it's probably corrosion over the shield, and we can deal with it and get it fixed. Again, as always, I'm not gonna power it up until I can see what is inside and how it looks inside, and obvious damages, something that is eye-catching, so I can at least minimize the risk of putting on some power just yet. So as for the keyboard, feels good. The missing, I think it's the delete button. I can salvage one from another machine, or I can probably find it over the eBay, or I can even try to put another delete key from another keyboard, but we'll see. Let's check it out. Okay, top cover is off. Doesn't look that bad. I think it's gonna be much better after some cleaning and washing. Only dirt and dust I can see so far, and the rest of the main computer, yeah, looks rusty. Here is the floppy drive. You can clearly see it's been left outside for quite some time. I believe the keyboard is full of dust, but this is something yeah, quite easy to fix. The key, of course, has to be replaced, and what else? The rest of the case, like the bottom case, holds some dusts, but that's okay. and the shield, the metallic shield, is also having rust from here and there and almost everywhere. So I'm going to start bringing this into pieces, remove the keyboard for starters, and start the cleaning process. And the major thing is we make sure this rust is only around the shield and not underneath onto the motherboard or the components, and yeah, that would be great. I think yeah, even at this right part of the base of the keyboard you can find rust, but limited. Maybe it is really something we can deal with pretty easily. Let's see. So let's start pulling this thing apart and find out what is going on. The keyboard has this metallic plate which holds everything together, and right on the edge, I guess by gravity, since this is the edge of the computer, has this big part of rust, but the rest of it looks okay, only that part. And yeah, because everything is concentrated right there on the edge. I don't believe there is something wrong, or I hope it won't be anything more than that. I can easily clean this up with some vinegar or lemon or both, and give it a good wash, and yeah, deal with it later. The floppy drive and this shield has to be removed. Cannot see any sign of corrosion over the pins of the expansion, and all I can see is dust, which is normal and not a big deal after all. One thing you have to be a bit cautious with is how to bend those pins that hold the shield in place, and cautious because they're kind of sharp, and you gotta be careful with this. Then you can get the shield off. You can release the shield, the top part of the shield, so you can reach the motherboard underneath there. So let me do just that. And I think this Amiga comes with many surprises. Now, what is this thing doing in between the shield and the motherboard, placed carefully among the chips? This is a module, if I'm not mistaken, with a battery holding the real-time clock, and again, it shouldn't have been there in the first place because it's a module, and I think, yeah, it has mold, like really has mold onto the chip coming from the battery and around the circuit. So I guess I have to clean it up with some lemon. But the guy must have had no idea where to put it, so he placed it, whoever the guy was, in between the chips so it fits, and then he closed the Amiga and put the shield in place. Yes, and unbelievable. Anyways, this real-time clock module goes there. You cannot put it the other way around, of course. It was designed this way, so I have to clean it and remove the mold and rust and check the traces, and it was right there waiting for us. Oh boy. Okay, so I can deal with this later. The chip has mold around the pins. I have to remove the battery, replace the battery, which is something I cannot do today. I don't have this type of battery in my spares, but I can do it later. And yeah, I think I'm gonna put it back in place, although the system will detect no real-time clock, and it will report no real-time clock operation, which is okay for now. Let's remove this from the side expansion and start looking at the motherboard closely. I can see no obvious damage. I can see no corrosion over the individual components, but only onto and around the floppy drive, which I'm going to take care of that later. But the motherboard is clean, and I believe it has to do with the shield protecting the components. Of course, I'm gonna have to see the bottom side as well. Now I can see, yeah, not even on the crystal, no sign of corrosion, which is good. I can see that the Agnes chip is the 8372A, which is good. That means we can place right there extra memory and make it 1 megabyte. After all, the Agnes 8371, which was the other model of Agnes, or the previous, can hold up to half a megabyte of RAM, which is good. I was lucky with this one. So I don't believe it's worth buying the chips and do the mod to upgrade the RAM, I mean. So for now I'm gonna be looking for to bring it back to life if possible, and that will be all for today. Okay, so I'm good with this upper side of the motherboard. I think everything looks nice and clean, which is a real surprise. So let's move further and investigate deeper. But first I will take off the bottom part of the case along with the front panel, the whole thing, and put it under the tap and start washing this a bit. Let it dry. In the meantime, I can start looking at the rest of the parts of the motherboard, for example underside, and see what happens there. You can see clearly there are signs and stains from the corrosion, but the shield, bottom shield and upper part of shield helped significantly, and nothing got into the motherboard itself, and everything looks good. So yeah, washing is needed now for the plastics, and I'm gonna take a good look at the disk drive, because yeah, it looks like it can use some cleaning, and I'm going to put some dust off inside and leave it right there without further cleaning in the inside and see if this is gonna be good enough. I'm going to skip this part really quick, because you know the drill. Under the tap, an old toothbrush, some hard sponge, and some dishwasher detergent will do the job to remove any kind of dust, but also any sign of oil or greasy stuff. Yeah, you know the drill. I'm going to leave it outside to get dry and really get back to where we left. Check the underside of the motherboard now, which actually comes together with the bottom part of the shield, which is yeah, full of rust. You can tell by yourself, especially those ventilation gaps, and I can see the non-conductive paper underneath. So all I can do is now I can get the lightest of the sandpaper I can get and give it a good clean, so we make sure no rusty particles are gonna be left there, or any metallic particles that can get inside and fry something in the future, like from this hole over here, or something like that. So I will make it shiny and clean, and we can put it back in place with the use of this light sandpaper. I think we're gonna be good, or the back side of the kitchen sponge. Now there is always a little pain with this hex screws holding the bottom part of the shield together with the main board, but you have to remove them all. And if I remember this right, it's gonna be 2 by 6, 12 in total. Dozen of screws from every port, parallel, serial, the sound port, down to RGB and monochrome. So let me do that, and then we can remove and separate the bottom part of the shield and the motherboard for further cleaning. You have to be careful when putting those back. You have to tighten them well, because if you screw some peripheral then and they are loose, it's gonna be a pain to get it back again. So all hex screws removed, a dozen in total. Here we have it, and now we can check underneath the board for any kind of damage or rust or whatever, which apparently is not the case, and I'm happy because it looks very, very clean. And this is because of the shield again. So don't you, I wouldn't suggest to think of removing the shield in any case, even if you are in Europe. So this is not all about regulations and stuff or interference. This is pure protection to the system. Maybe now we have a stain here and there, but I can take care of that with a toothbrush. And okay, now I think I'm going to power it up and test it, now that I've seen that everything looks fine to the eye. At this point we shouldn't forget to check under the paper, which works as a non-conductive material in between the bottom part of the shield and the main board, because it holds every particle or dust or whatever, and protects the motherboard, so it doesn't get in contact with anything. The only thing, yeah, we should clean it too. The only thing I do not get really is why do they have the ventilation gaps there while the paper sits over the gap. In my opinion, it should have the same gaps, so the air can go through. But you can see there is rust underneath there, and I'm gonna do the same thing with sandpaper. So both sides need some good cleaning. Of course, it's not gonna be like removed for good or everything, but at least it won't be that bad, so it cannot create any particles around the system. And what I mean is the rusty dust, kind of dust that can fry components or give you trouble or short circuit or anything. Now back to the real-time clock module. I'm going to put the neutralizer, the domestic neutralizer, could be vinegar, could be lemon, to remove the rust and neutralize the acid from the battery, but also the mold from the IC pins, and see if we can make it work later, because now I don't have a battery to replace this one for now. But I'm gonna put it on the Amiga over the initial test, and see if it's gonna be working at all. This whole part needs to be cleaned thoroughly. I assume the mold has got inside the IC pins also, but the domestic recipe never fails. So vinegar in this case, and a little tiny brush can clean up the components and neutralize the acid, and prepare the ground for further cleaning with some alcohol. After all, I'm going to remove the chip in any case and see what is going on inside the socket. But until then, let's give it a good clean around the battery, around the pins, and all over the board, because the acid at some point, you can tell it's greenish, but it's also around the other components, and probably you cannot see it very well, so it needs some good cleaning. I'm gonna let it dry, and on a second thought I'm not gonna put it on for the initial test. And this is the best part, the moment of truth. Always, I'm lucky I have this. Wow, it works. Wow, it came up. I'm lucky I have this power supply from my Amiga 600, but I didn't have any 500 before. I never had actually one before. Oh yes, it works. I guess my $3 Amiga worth every penny, and I'm happy. I hooked up the monochrome display, hooked up the disk drive, which makes some kind of strange noises trying to find a diskette inside, and yes, yeah, I'm happy. This is quite a moment for me. It was a bargain, an accidental find down at the flea market, and wow, we have a fully working system here. Now with great pleasure I'm gonna put everything back together, starting with a paper which acts as a non-conductive material to the bottom side of the shield, metallic shield. What I do usually in cases like this is I put cellophane tape to hold it in place. So you can try that if you will. Cellophane tape around the corners, or the points where you can be sure that it's gonna be stable, and then we can place the motherboard on top of that, and it's gonna be moving at all. So this is my idea. I'm gonna put the last piece of the cellophane tape right over here. I think it's stable now. It's gonna be fine. Now the plastics are clean and dry. I found minor cracks at some point, but overall it looks good. Major points of interest like the screws and those little clips that hold the keyboard in place are okay. Minor cracks I found mostly on the side, over the expansion side port right over here. All you can do is some glue, nothing else to do. Yeah, it was a crack right there. Not a big deal, mostly cosmetic, but some glue will do the work. And yeah, I'm gonna call it a wrap and close the case, put the top part of the shield in place. One last inspection around the chips, one last inspection around the main board, and yeah, I will call it a wrap soon. And I hope you enjoyed this video about my 3 bucks Amiga. Again, I guess everything is working, keyboard working, powered up, and it's clean finally. You can tell the difference. One thing I have to do is to somehow get the delete key, which is missing. The rest of the system looks pretty fine. I was lucky I had the power supply from my 600 Amiga, which has been restored recently. You can find the video within the channel. And I also had the mouse from the 600. That helped a lot. And all I have to do now is to find somehow a game or a kind of software to put it in and see what happens. So yeah, mouse is here, ready for some action. And I guess tomorrow I have to ask for a favor from an old friend, so I can have a copy of some software, probably a game that I can use, I can test and I can play with. But so far I'm very pleased with this bargain, as it was a real bargain, and found by accident again with this system. And I'm gonna celebrate tomorrow the way I should with some game. And I'm gonna close this video with great pleasure, after all. And pure pleasure is Outrun, one of my best ever. This is day 2, and I have this copy of this game by a friend, so I can now test the Amiga, and I can close the session, can close this video and get some fun with this game. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing. It's always a pleasure to not to play only games, but games onto systems that I can bring back to life and restore, repair, fry or burn on camera. But this is what it's all about. So thanks again for watching. I'll be catching you soon with another video, and yeah, have a great day.